Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Olaf Kock is working in the software business, currently in technical sales. As a self described nerd, he found the ketogenic diet in 2012 through a podcast on software security out of pure chance and quickly started a 1 month trial of the mysterious condition called ketosis. This experiment has evolved through several flavors since then, but as far as Olaf is concerned, the experiment never ended and he's still ketogenic to this day. Compared to many others on the ketogenic lifestyle, his health journey was rather unremarkable until 2024, when he discovered that he could indeed treat his long-standing nasty conditions or diverticulosis and diverticulitis with proper nutrition, which to him evolved to mean that he needed to try carnivore and eliminate all plant foods from his diet. This year, he tried his luck by bringing his dietary experience into a Toastmasters Speech Contest, which consisted of an amazing 7 minute speech. Judges are supposed to judge the delivery, not the content, but there might have been a hardcore vegan among them or something. Regardless of the result, Olaf coming from and living in Hamburg, Germany, means that Olaf is an authentic hamburger. That is amazing. Olaf Kock, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Hi, Casey. Happy to be here.
It
Finally,
is
I
an
can talk back
honor.
to you.
Oh, it's an honor to host you. We've been going back and forth for a few weeks. You kindly introduced yourself and you sent me a copy of your speech, which was absolutely wonderful. And it did take a bit of cajoling to try to get you to come on our show today. You kind of mentioned that your story is not that special, not that remarkable. We exchanged a few emails back and forth. And as you were outlining your own personal story, you probably came up with a good 10 or 12 bullet points of all these amazing things that you've gone through in your own life and almost kind of realize that you do have quite the amazing story as well. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, for the amazing part, somebody else has to judge that. It's definitely a different order of magnitude than some people who have been like destroyed to the ground and then built up from that. Uh, it has been uncomfortable. Like some parts have been uncomfortable, but that's about it
Got it. Well, I'm
for me.
excited to deep dive into that with you today and learn about your story. I do want to skip ahead just a little bit. Can you tell us about this speech and a little bit about Toastmasters? It's not something that I'm as familiar with.
Mhm.
I've heard the term before, but yeah, like I said, it's not something I'm very familiar with. So, can you tell us about the process of what that was like and why you decided to do that?
Sure. So, Toastmasters is an international organization, and you typically go there in order to practice public speaking. You have an audience there, and that audience likes listening to all kinds of topics and speeches and gives you feedback. So, you learn from each other. Compare that with a weekend course that you book with a speech coach. The speech coach is right and tells you what to do, while in Toastmasters, you basically help yourself and help others on that level. And they have a yearly contest going to the World Championship of Public Speaking, where I have now failed. Just five more wins, and I would have won, but it's five or six. I can't recall. So I've failed pretty early. During those speeches, like those speeches are typically stories of personal distress or conflict. Like they typically are personal. And I wanted to participate again. So I figured I might as well go with nutrition. I wanted to talk about nutrition, which is always so hard. And specifically if you're just non-standard. And it's part of my speech thus is that I'm saying like anybody who has had success changing their diet has to talk about it. It's the law, deal with it. So for me, that was my comic relief that I said, I was like, if somebody can't stand it, I was like, oh, somebody else telling me what to eat. I was like, I figured there must be some comic relief in there. And as you said in the introduction, if there is a vegan in there, I did not really want to go that far out and saying, oh, don't eat plants or what I like to say. I refer to myself as a second and third level vegan. That is, I want my food to only have eaten plants, unless it's an egg or chicken. I want them to have eaten insects. So that's the third level. And with that, basically, I figured actually I had a conflict. And you also mentioned that in the introduction there was diverticulitis, however you pronounce that. Basically, for anybody who doesn't know it, it's an inflammatory condition of the colon, where you have some pouches in there and some residue. What do you say? Assembles there and gets inflamed and can be quite painful. That sent me to a hospital in 2010 when they just basically they limited me to food, which is glucose dripping right into my vein. And after a week, it was more or less good enough to let me go home. That was abroad, that was out of country. And that changed a bit. Well, it came back every now and then, as they told me. Yeah, it's a mechanical condition, so it will come back. You'll have that until the end of your life. In 2012, I found ketogenic lifestyle and figured I'm going to try that. I found it, what was it, in June? And then first, what to say, I've researched. So it sounded so funny that I can't believe that, what's in there? I didn't like that. So it was blueberry season anyway, and who wants to cut out all kinds of food with sugar during blueberry season for a month and then continue having them when they're no longer available? So I've waited until September, when blueberry season was more or less over here. And then as far as I'm concerned, September is still on, September 2012. So
Wow,
my 1
that's
month
amazing.
experiment is still running well.
Congratulations. I started my 1 month carnivore diet experiment in April of 2019, and here we are almost 6 years later. So yeah, these experiments that continue going are quite lovely. And that's great about the speech. You said you failed to advance, but you certainly didn't fail in the way that you presented your speech. You did a really good job. You're kind enough to send me a video, which I quite enjoyed. And so, yeah, how was the speech itself kind of received by the people there?
It was well received, I would say. It was a small audience, and I had imagined that it was a little bit funnier at places, but they were very concentrated and looking at it. We didn't have microphones because the PA system failed us, so we had to just speak from the stage into a large room with a small audience. And I guess there is, well, some problems. German audience, different language, might have cut into that, but that's the same for the others as well. So that's not only why I failed. Everybody had the same problem. But as far as the audience goes, after the speech, we had a break, and I've had great discussions with some, including someone who said, yeah, actually, my son has some problem, and I can't recall what it was. Might have been Crohn's, might have been something else. And I said, well, yeah, it would definitely help him. And then she said, oh, yeah, and for ethical reasons, he's vegan. And I was like, oh, there's a bit too much to cover during this break, but I would say from everything that I have learned, that's the precise wrong approach. But I've had conversations after that, so I had people curious enough to just inquire further. And I don't know if we spoke about that during the speech. I did not really want to go full carnivore and be, I don't know, distracting, irritating, repulsive to any of the judges or any of the audience. So I kind of talked around it, and I've limited myself to say I avoid fiber. I don't know how else to do that without going carnivore, but to avoid fiber is now like my way of saying that if I don't want to go all in.
There you go. That's a great way to present it, and I think most of us in the space would take any opportunity that we can to talk with anybody who's willing to listen to us. It's just not always the easiest when we're bringing it up and try to preach it to other people, but anywhere we can have those opportunities to start conversations, I think is wonderful. So again, I think you did very, very well. And I'll be curious to see how the competitions go in the future, but you should be very proud of the speech. You did an amazing job, and I'm really happy to hear that you started some conversations after that as well.
It was good. All the preparation is typically good when you practice it over and over and over, and when you refine it and refine it and refine it, and in the end really mean it and shorten it because it has to match the time. Otherwise, you're disqualified if it goes too long and so on. So that process is quite nice. So I
Wow.
really like that
Yeah,
that
good.
experience.
Well, you did an amazing job, like I said. So, yeah, I would love to hear your story. You're born and raised in Hamburg, I believe. Tell us what it was like to grow up in Germany. If you had any health issues, what the food was like as you were growing up, what things you were interested in, that sort of thing.
Well, for you and this topic, I would say I had an unremarkable growing up. It was a standard diet. Then I had been riddled with quite a lot of acne during my youth. And one of my doctors told me, well, you might try vegetarian. So I've tried and it didn't work. So I figured, meh, okay, nothing works. So it's lotions and deal with it, more or less. And after a while, started eating meat again. I think I had another vegetarian episode, but that didn't last long. I can't even recall why. I've been active swimming. Oh, there's a nice story on ketogenic and swimming. Later on, when I started ketosis and well, during my youth, started swimming and then been on and off during my adult life. Now I have a job for the last 15 years actually that required quite a lot of travel for the first 10 years at least until 2020. Can't recall what happened, but now I'm mostly at home and in digital meetings. And yeah, so that swimming basically repeated during some of the times, not quite when I was traveling a lot, but part of that did. So you said in 2012, or we said in 2012, I've started experimenting with ketosis. Then I also had a more active swimming time later on and discovered suddenly that without being much in training, I've just been swimming for 30 minutes. Just, yeah, okay, let's do however long that distance was. I don't know. But then I figured, actually, let's see how long I can dive. Where diving is swimming underwater, right? Not jumping in, or is it both? I can't recall. Like vocabulary is hard, but
Yeah, it would be jumping in, correct?
no, swimming underwater.
Oh,
That
got it.
kind of
Okay.
diving
Yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah.
pool. Like
Yeah.
so, after 30 minutes of training, I managed to just go a full lane without being stressed.
Wow.
And my memories was basically even when I was in training, it was like going through, and then in the end, I'm gasping for air, specifically after training. And there suddenly it didn't happen anymore. So I was just never out of breath. And then I learned about this different oxygen consumption. Like if you burn fat, you basically have a, what is that, zero 0.7? You probably know that, 0.7 factor of oxygen requirements
Yeah.
for the same energy. And suddenly I was like, yeah, actually, it works.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So I get what you're saying. So swimming under the water without coming up for breath. So it's similar to free diving, where you go and hold your breath for as long as possible and
Yeah,
either go deep or swim the entire length on a single breath.
yeah. So free diving typically would be, I think, down, so vertical, but mine was horizontal, 25
Horizontal.
meters. Sorry about that, half Olympic size. So I can go metric, I can't go imperial.
No, that's impressive. That's fantastic. And you absolutely nailed it with what you said about the zero 0.7 as far as the oxygen consumption. We call that respiratory quotient or
Mhm.
respiratory exchange ratio, where we measure the oxygen that comes in and see how much carbon dioxide is produced as a byproduct. And when somebody's burning pure fat, that's the number that you cited is zero 0.7. So it's a much more efficient fuel, like you said. So yeah, they're very well said.
I've tried giving that to a family member who suffers from COPD,
Yeah, that sounds right.
whatever
COPD.
the lung problems. No success. Like, okay, yeah, you say so. I like my bread. Meh. What can you do?
Yeah. What can you do? You can try. Yeah, people like bread. um,
Yeah.
Going back to 2012, we mentioned in the introduction that you were introduced to the ketogenic diet through a completely different type of a podcast you were listening to at the time.
Yep.
What was that like?
So it was the podcast is Security Now. Steve Gibson is the host or one of the hosts, and he had a vitamin D episode sometime earlier, and that was quite interesting. I can't recall if that was published within the Security Now podcast or if they just talked about it and had a special episode. For ketogenic lifestyle, they definitely had separate episodes, so it is not within the Security Now podcast, but they talked about it. And I was like, vitamin D was quite interesting, so I'll listen into that. And what Steve there described was basically his experiment going low carb and then suddenly discovering ketosis through different smells and just state of mind. So they had two episodes with 1 hour each, and that just captured me. That was unbelievable, and I said I want to feel that as well. And if it
Wow.
takes a week or two to get in, a month would be good for that experiment, just to have done that. And from then on, I was like, I can't. Everybody tells me that keeping that up is hard. I'm like, no. After a month without sugar, everything else, a strawberry is borderline ridiculously sweet. So I can't do that. Recently, I've had a bottle of Coke. I've had that here, not Coke, well, cola. I've had that here from a birthday party for others and was just here. And I said, well, let's experiment. I could get it down, but it needed to be really cold so that basically you don't get any taste. But the night after, I've had wild, wild dreams, which I've never had. So I did not sleep well. And that I could only get down with the taste, like literally ice, ice, ice cold. And it was unbelievable.
Wow.
I had to force myself drinking it.
Wow.
Even
Yeah,
though
that's a similar.
there are other parts like bread, croissant, or something like that. I do love that. It's really nice. And there's a bakery here that does them really well. So I try them about once a quarter or twice a year. I'll have one, but I'll time that in a way that I don't need to do anything significant the next day.
Mm. Yeah, you have a similar reaction to what I would have if I go off, which I do more and more rarely. My sleep is terrible. My anxiety comes back, and then I start craving more of it. I just want more and more and more sugar. And you can really override that kind of like the realignment of your taste buds. How things like you mentioned, like a strawberry becoming so sweet. If you keep going back into sugar, it will not be sweet anymore, and you'll want the really, really overly sweet kinds of things. And so very
Yeah.
interesting experiment, and that's exactly what would happen to me, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners out there as well.
So I can't imagine the typical way to serve strawberries is you cut them up and then you sugar them. You sugarcoat them
Right.
and add milk. It's like, yeah. It's like,
You got to make it more
I
sweet.
don't know. So when people say it's hard, I do not understand. I don't get the craving afterwards. So like anytime I try something, I was like, meh, yeah, okay, there was, I still know how that tastes. I do like that taste, or I don't like that taste. For sweet, it's definitely meh, no, I don't like that. But for like croissant, I love it. But the 2 minutes or 5 minutes of tastes are not worth the 1 2 days of not being able to focus.
Well said. Well said. Like you said, if you have to schedule when you're going to have it because you're going to need some days off and you can't be as productive, you have to question whether that's something you want in your life regularly, or like you said, just as an occasional treat. So I love the way that you manage that.
Yeah.
And yeah, in 2012 was quite early. There wasn't a ton of people. I don't think they were talking about, the ketogenic diet in particular, or low carb, really hardly anything, although some things were out there. If you're like most of us, you get a taste, figuratively and literally, of a ketogenic diet. You really want to learn more. Were those two episodes sufficient enough for you to know what you needed to know to be able to try it, or were there other sources that you found at the time that were quite helpful in teaching you about that?
I can't recall the exact timing, and right now it's hard to go back to the history. I do recall an early podcaster in there was similarly productive as you are, which is Jimmy Moore, the Live in La Vida Low Carb show, which now disappeared from the internet, so I can't go back and see when he started. He
Yeah.
might have helped me getting the first steps, or might have come in later. I don't know. I'm listening to podcasts forever. So I've been around. I've been watching from the inside when Apple supported podcasts on iTunes, which is like before several of your listeners will be born, I guess. But it yeah, it's a long time. So podcasts are a natural way to get information from me. The internet, I know how to use it. Let's say like that. I'm working with it. So I can find that information. I had a couple of books back then, and I can't recall when other podcasts came in. Like there was biohacking, Dave Asprey, and can't recall who else. And for example, when Winnie Totteridge came in, but I believe that was later than I started. Definitely a couple of books, and then self-experimentation.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so speaking of the self-experimentation, you mentioned that performance, swimming definitely improved. What other things did you notice improve on a ketogenic diet? Again, hard to recall. It's been 13 years almost, but what other things do you remember getting better on a ketogenic diet?
Oh, the main part is definitely my ability to focus. Just think straight. I've been doing software training since 2010. And since I've started, there is no more lunch coma. So I don't mind if it's before lunch, after lunch. People are falling asleep, yes, because they had lunch, but I don't, which makes it for me easier to teach, not easier for them to listen. But if I would fall asleep, mm, wouldn't they wouldn't enjoy it that much, or I wouldn't enjoy it that much anyway. So yes, it's still hard to teach sleeping students or tired students, but at least I'm not tired anymore. There was, let me see, in terms of performance, skiing was a lot of fun. I do recall a ski trip where, number one, the hotel had an omelette chef, and just ordering an omelette with butter, plus extra butter and more eggs, and then moving over to the buffet and loading on a little bit more butter made him like look at me as if I'm from a different planet. And on the plus side, the lunch when skiing is typically crappy. All of the restaurants just have fast food, and I just skipped it. I had a tea, and no problems at all. So just that feeling was amazing. Not having to eat, and same as that, no lunch coma on skis. That's amazing.
Wow,
That just works.
wow.
Um, Let me see, what else can I think of. Oh, this is skipping a long time ahead to, I believe, end of last year. Must have been end of last year, but it's not my own experience. That's my mother now. When I've had Anthony Chaffee in my ear, we were just talking about random stuff, and she talked about blood pressure and had completely erratic and random episodes of really high blood pressure when she was sleeping. So to the point that she was awake and knew immediately, now this is through the roof, including some emergency rooms. But yeah, nobody could ever tell her what that is. So I was there. We talked about whatever random stuff plus blood pressure. And then suddenly I had Chafee in my ear, figuratively. And I heard just, plants are trying to kill you. And that was when or because she was just pouring in more tea. And she was drinking like 2-3 liters of tea per day religiously, because, you tell older people you'll have to drink enough because you typically don't. And she was really buying into that. And she had 2-3 liters of tea. So I said, well, as an experiment, try to go 1 week without. Just take water. And she was open enough to try it. And after a week called me out of the blue and just said, I wanted to call you to say thank you. And I had no clue what for. It was a week later. Completely normal blood pressure ever since.
Wow.
Just from whatever. It was random because it was some tea that she reacted to, some tea she didn't. And she said, it's not worth going back to figure out which one it was because I like this better.
Wow. That's
So that's
amazing.
what Chafee does.
Wow. Yes, that is what
Just
Chafee does. That's
this iconic plants are trying to kill you.
Yep, I've heard that many, many times, my friend. Oh, wow, that's amazing that that was able to help with that so much. So had you already gone carnivore sometime in 2024? You said you had your journey was fairly unremarkable between 2012 and 2024. That was the time that you personally switched over to a carnivore diet?
It must have been 24 summer-ish that I said I'm going down. So if I don't get any vegetables, who cares? But onions belong into an omelette, and it's a little bit better with some mushrooms, and you can have that stuff. So I've had that, but less and less during summer. And I would say since September, I've been more strict. When I toned it down because I heard more and more of several carnivore experiences, and I figured that coming back to my diverticulitis, which came back every now and then, so it flared up and down and up and down, and I can't recall when I've had an actual emergency room visit where I turned in. It must have been early 24, and around that time I discovered that almonds are something that I do react to. I've always had like low grade. It's like, man, something is twitching down there, so it must have been that. But one night it was particularly bad, and after that I had the epiphany. I felt like, let's ditch the almonds. I love the what do you call that? Not peanut butter, but almond butter in yogurt. I love that. It's a great taste, but I did not agree with it at all. And then everything was good after that, or way better. Let's say way better after that. And when I went carnivore, it was completely gone. So I was like, okay, I'm sold. This is great. And one night, late autumn, probably, I had my parents here for dinner, and I've been cooking, and of course I'll have some vegetables prepared. Accidentally prepared 3 plates just like each other. So I'll have those vegetables. Who cares? I did not die until now, so I'll have them. So that was basically the last time that I've had a sizable portion of vegetables. And the night after, I've had another flare up.
Wow.
So that was basically what told me, actually, it works better. And now I have my own proper health story, not just, I'm able to focus better. I have that as well.
Yeah,
So
that's amazing. Wow. Okay. So I had a loved one who had diverticulitis as well, and ended up having to get a section of the colon removed. And it was extremely painful over the years. Different things would flare it up, but it seemed to be a lot of the seeds, like you mentioned, almonds, and also a lot of the seeds that were in certain fruits. Tomatoes, I remember being particularly problematic. It sounded like there were lots of different plant foods that just didn't go well for you. Were you able to identify other ones that you knew were causing a problem? Or was it pretty much almost like across the board, getting rid of all plants was the best thing?
um, well, getting rid of all plants definitely helps. And I was never curious enough to go back and then try what would trigger something. Like the one time it was mushrooms and onions, and I believe that's it. But I can't recall, and I don't care. I was like, man, why would I want to go back and try that?
Right.
I mean, it was crazy enough. The last emergency room visit was literally I went in there and told them, by the way, I have this condition, it's this, and I need you to treat that. Which they look at you as if you're crazy. It's like, hey, I'm the doctor, or like we're the doctors. Don't tell us your diagnosis. And I was like, well, yeah, you don't need to look. I was like, or look, try to confirm this. They did. So the inflammatory value, what's that? The CRP. Typically, like when I don't have any flare up, that's below 1. so it's really low. And they say up to 5 is normal. They've tried it; it was 129,
What?
and they're like, yeah. So they're
That's
like,
crazy.
okay,
I've never heard of it that high.
good that you came, as they said, and then pumped me full of antibiotics, and it was good after that. But that's a reason why I say, yeah, I don't care figuring out what else does that to me, because I'm better off without that.
Clearly. Wow, that's amazing. I've never heard of a CRP that high. That's astronomical. Wow, well, good for you for making the change. Was it terribly difficult to transition over from a ketogenic diet over to a carnivore diet?
No, no. Just as before, it was like ditch sugar for a while, and suddenly it's hard to bring in more sugar, or to try it again. I should have brought that. I recently found a kilo of sugar, like the last pack of sugar that I ever bought, for guests who want to have that in coffee or whatever. I looked at it, and it has an expiry date. Why ever sugar would expire, but that was August 2019.
In a while.
Still unopened.
Yeah, wow.
So,
That is
um,
funny. I'm not sure why sugar would expire either, but yeah, that's remarkable. And then, can you tell us what conditions also improved? I mean, the diverticulitis thing, like we said, is a really painful condition, and surely was
mhm.
enough of a motivator for you. But I think we all know that the switch from ketogenic to carnivore can include a list of many, many different things that improve quite a bit. So, were there other things you noticed that improved while on a carnivore diet?
um, nothing as uh, nothing as big as that. Recently, I've been at a conference where I met a colleague of mine who knows me basically since I work for that company, who then stated, like, looked at me and he said, "You don't age. I was like, you look like the day we hired you." And yeah, that was 15 years ago. Probably 12 until 12 years ago, we have worked together every day or week. And then he moved to a different place, but is still within the same company. So I would say, yeah, I'll take that. I don't have a painting of me which is somewhere in a cabinet and that ages. So um, I'll take it to not age. I don't mind. There is no more
That's great.
acne, or if there is, then I know why. Right? That's another part. Like, yes, of course, I'm not 100% perfect. Oh, in fact, I am not 100% perfect. I do eat plants, or I do consume plants, and that always irritates people when I say the three kinds of plants that I've consumed most are coffee, in that order: coffee, wine, to the point of 2 bottles per month, and chocolate, which I do like a brand that has 99% and 100% chocolate,
Oh wow.
because why would you not?
Especially where you live in the world. You guys have amazing chocolate there.
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
wow.
So that's literally 100% cocoa and nothing else, or 99% plus 1% of sugar. Like, yeah, I'll
Yeah,
take that. I don't
yeah.
mind.
That's great. I was just asked this on a podcast that I was hosted and asked about things like coffee, tea, if that's considered carnivore. And it's like I just go by a hyper carnivore in nature consumes a majority of their calories from animal products and a certain percentage not. And so everybody just needs to be pragmatic and a little bit different. And that's not where I'm going to plant my flag and say that no, you can never have coffee on a carnivore diet. I do coffee and I do fine with it, and I notice benefits. And I encourage, most of the people that I coach to, if you want to know if it's good for you or not, eliminate it and see how you do. But also, I just love this point that Amy Berger made at the last health conference that I was at, attending on purpose, and she got on stage and told everybody, like, look, the point of a ketogenic diet, the point of a carnivore diet is to enjoy it. It's not to make your life miserable and hate what you're doing. This is for your own good and for your own benefit. And whether your carnivore diet has an avocado once a week, or like you said, like a bottle of wine once a month, twice a month, like the point is that you have a healthy, happy life and decide what that looks like for you. If bread tastes amazing and you're willing to go through, chronic health conditions to be able to continue consuming the bread, then that's fine, go for it. But just understand what the trade-off is going to be. And yeah, I wish more people would understand that the point of a carnivore diet is to make it work for you and make it be enjoyable in your own life.
Yeah. And coming to that, I'll have the coffee with heavy cream, and I can stop anytime, right? I can stop anytime, no problem. I just don't want to.
There you
Um,
go.
I know that I could easily drop another like 4 kilos because I've tried without that, but I'm not going after the scale. What what actually this is something that that also sold me. Just before I started, I've had the epiphany. I said, like, if I buy another suit, I want that suit to be in color. I want that to be remarkable. And whenever I told some salesperson, I was like, I want it to be in color, they asked me which color. I said, you don't understand me. I want it in color. So something that sticks out, nothing like navy blue or black or gray or whatever. And I found the perfect suit jacket. And it was, I saw it hanging there and I was like, I gotta have that. And the largest size they had was just enough so that I could tie it. Let me see, I have to step back a little bit. So I could tie it just before my belly. And then I said, I have this, but I cannot breathe if I close it. Right? So it barely closed in front of my belly. Then I started ketogenic. I did not lose a lot of weight, but the jacket is now I can comfortably close it and pull it to the front. So it's completely redistributed.
Wow.
And that's basically what I'm measuring on.
Yeah.
And I've had several other jackets of the same size, some even a little bit smaller than that. And I do enjoy like colorful suits, which helps an introvert to start a conversation.
Wow, I love that. That's fantastic. Yeah, it always goes back to somebody's goals, right? You said you could, eliminate either the coffee or more likely heavy cream. I find that heavy cream for people who are trying to lose weight on a carnivore diet can sometimes be problematic. They think they're adding a splash, and maybe it's a little bit more of a splash, or they're having more coffee than they thought. So I sometimes see that if somebody is trying to lose weight, if that's their primary goal, that might be something to take a look at. But where you're not concerned about your weight, you're feeling really good, and it's adding to your life. That sounds wonderful. I wouldn't change that at all. That's great.
Yeah. It's definitely a splash, not a splish.
Perfect. A little bit longer. I love it. Tell us a little bit about your physical performance, any other improvements there, or even how your workouts have evolved over time.
Actually, they evolved down. I'm not doing that much these days other than walking the dog. That's probably the most scheduled movement that I get. I'm still a member of my gym, but like the machines don't see me that often. The sauna sees me way more often than the machines. I do feel like during day-to-day life, if I'm building something, if I'm gardening, if I'm doing like any kind of stuff, I do feel that I don't really tire. Just recently, we've had a day of, well, right here in Germany, we have this concept. If you don't have your own garden, you might have it detached at some other place. This is just a detached garden with a little house on there. And we've had some common ground work with all of the other people there. So cutting the hedges and bushes and like that. This is done by machines. So it's not a lot of work, right? But if you hold the machine like that on an arm in front of you and let the machine cut, it is work. So I definitely felt it like, yeah, okay, I've been holding this weight, this vibrating weight for a long time. So I got tired, but next day, not bad. So it was all good, even though I was like completely unused to that kind of movement, motion, or holding up a weight in that position. And just other stuff that I do whenever I lift something, I never feel like, oh, actually, you should go back in order to keep that up. But it just never comes up. So right now
It's great.
here, if I go shopping, I typically bring it on the bike. Um, for for an American like you, I never owned a car. I can just walk if I want. I can take public transport, but these days I never do. So I can take the bike, walk to the next shops here. It's 5 minutes to the next shops, 10 minutes to others. So that works. So I do have some exercise, but not scheduled on machines, not
Yeah,
bending,
that's very
as I call it.
That's very interesting. We use the strength training obviously to build more strength, but also we would only want to build more strength if we feel like we're lacking strength. And it sounds like for what you're doing in your day-to-day life and everything that you need, you already have the strength to bike as far as you like or as you need to, and ski as much as you like, and do all the activities that you already need to. So it doesn't sound like there's a need to incorporate or a desire to incorporate more strength training than you're already doing, correct?
At least I don't really. I feel I should, but I'm not really motivated by bending iron. Um,
There you go. Yeah.
so
There you go. And I think there's so much to the quality of our workouts. I know the trend around here, and maybe you see it where you are as well, is people think they need to go to the gym, not just once a week, twice a week, but go 4 times a week, 5 times a week, 6 times a week, and they're working out all the time. And not only is it, very time consuming, but they're also not seemingly getting the results you would assume that they would be getting for going to the gym that much. Do you notice the same kind of thing around you?
I don't really see any hardcore gym goers. So no, I don't see that. I rather see hardcore dog walkers and no. Plus, if I wanted to go to the gym 5 days a week, probably my dog would sign me up for adoption and find someone else. I got
This
him
is true.
during the pandemic, so 2021, which means it was a task to go out and leave him here to train him on being alone for a while. He does, so he does quite well. Complains only for half a minute and then he's quiet. But yeah, that there's always that in the back of my mind. So starting something 5 days a week would definitely not go too well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. And as somebody that has to go into gym facilities and train my people all the time, let me just tell you that dog walkers, chronic dog walkers, are much friendlier and happier than a lot of people that go to the gym. So you're not missing out on much there. I can tell you that.
Absolutely, yes.
I can tell you that. I like the dog walkers by my lake much more than I like a lot of the people that go into the gym. So you're not missing out on much.
Yeah, that's
Tell
right.
us about a normal day of a diet for you currently. Like what things are you currently eating? Um, yeah, what is a normal day in the life for you for diet these days?
Uh, one of the one of the standard parts is just omelette with or without cheese, sometimes with, sometimes without, but I definitely like cheese is one of the other dairy parts or pieces that I do love. I found one that I particularly like, and it's almost as earlier with nuts. A serving size for nuts is a bag, period. It's not a certain amount of that, but it's when you open it, serving size is just whatever you've opened. And with the cheese, it's similar. Yes, it lasts for 2 days or so whenever I have a piece, but it feels like, oh, there's still cheese in there. I gotta have it. So it calls my name. It's I can hear it when it's in the fridge, and when I'm over here in the office, I can totally hear the cheese. So I have it from time to time. From time to time, I have that omelet without, and lots of beef, which is what do you say? Minced meat.
Yep.
I've
We
just
call
got
it ground
that.
beef
I
around
have
here, but in England it's
ground
mince.
beef. That's it. Yeah, ground beef. So ground beef is a lot, and I started doing beef jerky recently, which and last week came to a great recipe or a great name basically, which is I found carnivore Oreos.
Okay, tell us about this.
It's very simple: beef jerky, butter, beef jerky.
Well done. Well done.
I like
Love it.
that. So it was beef jerky alone is just chewy, and with butter in there, it's really good. And then, so that worked quite well. And whenever I have jerky here, it's like, yeah, I'm not cooking. I have enough here. With regards to fasting, I don't know. Whenever I feel hungry, I eat, which is typically starting around lunch. I had coffee with cream before anyway, so why would I have something else? But that's it. I found a farmer who is now retired and handing over the business to someone else, where you could buy 1/8 of a cow, which I never did. I always went with 2 or 3/8 of that cow and have an extra freezer for that, which is you get a whole arrangement of different stuff, steaks and ground beef and like whatever, all pieces for a standard price. That was, what was that, 25 kilos is an eighth. Again, there we're in metric, but told you before, one of my colleagues has told me that the US they assured me, is adopting the metric system. So you probably know what 25 kilos are.
I do, because of kettlebells. If we change, I would be ecstatic, let me tell you.
No, but what he also said is, like, when you're adopting the metric system, he said, you're doing that. I couldn't believe it, but he said, yes, it happens inch by inch.
Wow. Yeah, there you go.
So,
well done.
that's basically my food. So beef, mostly, eggs, and butter. Yeah, all kinds of butter. I've been seeing when they had a special price for butter, I have actually carried out 20, 30 packs from the supermarket. People look at you funny, but I have a big freezer, and butter is really easy to freeze.
Good point. That's great. One thing that people say when they learn about this diet is that the diet is not sustainable or it gets boring. I certainly know that the list of foods that I can consume on a carnivore diet obviously is very vast. There's lots of different options and different things you can do. However, I end up sticking with the same 3 or 4 or 5 different things, and that's very satisfying and fulfilling for me. But a lot of people see this as a very restrictive diet, or a diet that is unsustainable, which clearly has not been your experience. What advice would you give to somebody who says, like, a low carbohydrate or carnivore diet is unsustainable, you're not going to be able to maintain this?
That's a hard one, because I think maybe they're right, because maybe their brain does not work the same way as mine does. On the other hand, what I always say is, I don't rule it out, because as long as you don't know what it's like to not have that craving, don't rule it out and just try it for 2 weeks, for 4 weeks. I typically would go for a month at least, and just saying, like, you can certainly do that. You can certainly try that if you're motivated to, but then many people aren't. And it's so preposterous still to say, like, yeah, okay, everybody says you gotta eat less meat, you gotta eat more plants, you gotta have your fiber. And I'm like, no. And it feels so much like a conspiracy. On the other hand, if you dig in, nothing has made more sense than any of the explanations that I've heard for the state of the mind, for the metabolism, like everything that happens when you have sugar, everything that happens when you have fat, when you have certain kinds of fat. Somebody, I don't know, early on said they're not using suntan anymore, sun lotion. And I said, well, that's a good thing to test, because I've always had factor 30, 50. I was never going out without less than that. So one day I figured, actually, I'm doing that for a couple of years now, I might as well try it. I didn't burn. I was like, that's worth it to me.
Yeah.
Just that is worth it to me. And I'm never one who wants to tan, because I typically lose my tan very fast. So I'm like, yeah, whatever I do now, it'll be gone anyway, so who cares? But not having to cover in all of that crap, like, I never really liked it.
Yeah.
Because in the end, it's like it's just slippery, and your clothes get fatty, and
Totally.
I hate it.
Yeah, I
So
know.
I'm
I
really
haven't.
happy to not have that anymore.
Yeah, I haven't touched this stuff in years. I haven't been sunburned in years as well. I think that's a huge part of the diet. And what a sunblock would do would kind of deactivate your own defenses against the sun and allow you to be in the sun for longer, which is not the best if your skin is not conditioned for it. And it will block, something that you mentioned earlier in this conversation, which is your vitamin D. So I'll always encourage people to do anything other than use sunblock. Like even if it's, you know, closer to summer and your skin's not ready for it, use shade or go out early or late. Like find any other strategy besides the sunblock, because you're right. Not only is it gross and slick, but yeah, it's really just not the best way for us to be out in the sun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
Okay. Okay, so I also wanted to ask you, does the carnivore diet seem to be catching on where you are? I talk to a lot of people who are in Europe that say that the carnivore diet is nowhere near getting picked up, and the vegan, vegetarian, plant-based message is much, much, much stronger still. I have to say, around here in America, more and more people are at least aware of it or talking about it. I don't feel so weird like I used to anymore. In fact, I was just watching my local hockey team play a game, and the two anchors came on, and our main goalie, his nickname is Veggie is what we call him. And one of the anchors said to the other anchor, like, "Oh, what's the healthiest portion of your plate?" Trying to make a reference to this goalie who's, veg is his nickname. And the other anchor said, "Well, we're actually carnivore, so we don't eat a lot of vegetables, but I guess it's veg." So, like, people are aware of it. People are talking about it. Do you find that same thing is happening where you are, or still not so much?
I find that people are aware. I'm not aware that people are trying it actively. One of the conversations that I had last week or the week before, when during the competition, when I just had the competition speech, and then during the break had some conversation, one of them approached me and said, "Oh yeah, I've just heard of someone changing their diet, and they actually ditched all the plants. They said they go all carnivore." I was like, "Yeah, that's precisely what I'm doing." He's like, "What?" So people are aware, but it's something exotic. So here in Germany, we have a TV show about nutrition with some doctors who are treating people with nutrition, typically the cases that other doctors have lucked out of. So all the medical help has failed them. Then they go to these who have a TV show, and of course then produce it, and they always say how great everything is with lots of legumes, and like cutting down on meat and eating more fiber and so on. And to that, I would say, is still the mainstream. I listen to them, and I feel many of the arguments I can totally get, but they stop like one step before, like before making sense of them. So it's like, yes, oatmeal is good, and having lots of carbohydrates is not good under certain conditions. But it can't be the oatmeal, because oatmeal is good. We know that. It's the best thing you can do for yourself. So you might need to do more of that, but less of something else. Um, so the standard of living, standard care, standard advice, I would say, does not go to carnivore unless you're in a specific scene. So yes, there's carnivore people here. There's a carnivore podcast or two that I'm aware of, probably more. I'm just not aware of them, but I'm not aware of the overall message uh, to be that popular.
Yeah, got it.
It's
That
it's
TV
easy
show
to
needs
get
to
the
do.
supply though.
Yeah, good. It sounds like it. You're able to, I mean, in the land of hamburger, you're able to find hamburgers, which is great.
I
Um,
find hamburgers everywhere.
Yes, you should. You definitely should. Yeah, the TV show needs to do like a 5 or 10 year follow-up where they go back and find these original people to see what condition they're in down the road. Because yes, if somebody is consuming a really crappy diet, initially going over to things like more fiber, more vegetables could be beneficial in the short term, but certainly not in the long term. So it's too bad they don't do like a longer follow-up period to see what's actually happening within the long term with these people.
It's a good point. They actually do that with their podcast. So they have an extra podcast where they come back to people later on, and then sometimes they say, yeah, I fell off the bandwagon, then tried it again, and so on. So in the end, they are a little bit better. They're always better than before. And the only thing that I don't know is, who do they pick? Those who still follow the advice, or if somebody would tell them, oh yeah, it's completely gone and I've now ditched all of your advice and I went full carnivore, I would guess they would not be guests on the podcast.
Yeah, good point. It's a really good point.
Because why would you do that? It's ridiculous. You cannot do that. You cannot live that way, and nobody would sustain it anyway.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Olaf, I have to say this has been an awesome conversation. And for somebody that didn't think they had a remarkable story, it certainly is a remarkable story. And that you're finding creative ways to share the message with anybody who will listen is really quite wonderful. If you would like us to, we would love to link the speech in the show notes if there's a way that people can access it so they can watch the speech, because it is very well done. And regardless of whether somebody's bought in to the carnivore diet or not, your presentation was really good. Your cadence was really good. I definitely have a lot to learn about getting better with speech like you have, and you've done a really nice job that way. But yeah, I found this conversation to be really enlightening and a lot of fun. And, I know you're not really out there too much in public, but do you have a place where people can go and check you out and drop you a message, or would you rather just kind of remain mostly anonymous? Where can people go to find you, connect with you in your work, or would you rather just have them reach out to us?
No, it's fine. I am not I'm not a sender on social media. I've ditched almost all of them. I hang out on Mastodon, so I've never heard that on Boundless Body. If you want to, the server is norden.social, norden.social, and my name is Olaf K, Olafk. There, that would be the handle. That's where you can reach me, and all of the others. Yes, I have my website, which is actually, let me see. I am unwell prepared for this because I have to say my website is terribly out of date, and yes, it is terribly out of date.com, which
That's
is
the name
forwarding.
of
it is, yes.
Terribly out of date.com.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
It's just so that I can say my website is terribly out of date, which it is, and it forwards to my personal website. It's just a forward. It's just an address that you can enter. But it is terribly out of date as well.
That's very well played. I love that. I absolutely love that. We will definitely link that in the show notes. Olaf, amazing conversation. Thank you so very much for reaching out. We try to tell all of our listeners that we love when people reach out and drop us a line and say hello and whatever. And I'm glad that you and I were able to communicate back and forth, share some emails, and start a really great friendship. And I'm so glad that you're willing to come on our show today and share what I would consider a remarkable journey through carnivore and keto with other people. So thank you so very much for your work. And thank you so very much for taking time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Well, I can only thank you, and I'm surprised that you're interested in that story, which is so benign, but happy to have talked to you, and I can't thank you enough for providing all of that content for all of those years and going in.
Well, thank you very, very much. Thank you for the kind words. Getting to share this message and meet so many great people like yourself out there all over the world is payment enough. So thank you for the kind words. And again, thank you so very much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate you all. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.